Thank you for joining us on Coffee Break, brought to you by the Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging, or M4A. M4A is a part of a network of 13 area agencies on aging that cover all 67 counties across the state. We are located in Alabaster, and we cover Blount, Chilton, Shelby, St. Clair, and Walker counties. We would love to find out how we can help your family today. For previous episodes of Coffee Break, feel free to check out our YouTube channel. Well, we want to welcome everybody in. This has been long overdue on us re-kicking our coffee break sessions back off. We took a bit of a hiatus, ended it towards the end of last year, and just getting the opportunity to kick things back off. So we're happy to have you rejoin us on this effort that we've had really going since the beginning of the pandemic. We've been doing these for a couple of years now. This is session number 28 of our coffee break series. And so kind of as a welcome, especially for those who are new to the coffee break, Coffee Break was a collaborative effort that we put together with two of our in-house programs at M4A, which is the Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging. And during the kickoff of the pandemic, we knew that this would be sort of a new approach, as did most of the world, and kind of turning to a virtual online approach to trying to get help and education to consumers. And we thought that maybe this might be a good idea to get information to our caregivers virtually through Zoom, which at that time, nobody really knew what Zoom was, but we're all very familiar with Zoom now. And so we live streamed these on Facebook, on multiple of our M4A pages, program pages, but we also record these and we put these on our YouTube channel. So each of the coffee breaks that we've had for the last couple of years are all on our YouTube channel via the Coffee Break playlist. So we'll go over a little bit more about M4A and who we are, what we do, and how you can reach us towards the end of this presentation. But for now, we do want to go ahead and kick things off with a disclaimer, because of course we are live streaming this. There's the options, of course, if you're in the webinar, there's a registration or RSVP, of course, to get into the Zoom function itself. So there is a chat and Q&A feature. If you have any questions for the speaker, whether it be the middle of the presentation, the end, afterwards, feel free to drop those and we will make sure that we get you an answer for those. But for those, especially in our social media world that might be watching this afterwards, we do want to make sure that we give a disclaimer, and that is a participation disclaimer, stating that participation in this online group session is voluntary. Individuals who choose to participate in this group acknowledge and agree that they are not required to share personal information with the group, but may voluntarily share aspects of their protected health information with the group. Protected health information is specifically defined in the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, also known as HIPAA. This includes, but is not limited to, your name, address, and specific medical conditions. Should you decide to voluntarily share protected information about yourself or your condition, you are responsible for that decision, and M4A nor our speakers are responsible for the disclosure or any redisclosures that may occur as a result. Additionally, any of the suggestions or recommendations presented during this meeting are not meant to diagnose nor treat disease. This meeting is intended for educational purposes only. Please consult with your own medical physician for any concerns regarding diagnosis and or treatment. And again, this is session number 28. As I previously mentioned, we have 27 of these on our YouTube channel. So if you miss one, feel free to go back and check those out. Again, Coffee Break is hosted by two of our in-house programs at M4A, and that is the PANDA Project and the Alabama Cares Caregiver Support Program. And again, if you missed the opening there, if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat or Q&A features. This isn't a webinar format, so we will be able to see those, and they will be private so long as you're in the Zoom meeting itself. For those in the social media world, feel free to comment under the video, and we will try to monitor those as closely as we can and get an answer live within the video. So today we're going to be blessed to have guest speaker and author, Ms. Brooklyn White. She's going to be talking to us about coping with emotions and asking for help. Ms. Brooklyn, I will stop sharing my screen and sort of let you give your background and sort of do an introduction for yourself and take us through some tips and tricks for caregivers on how we can cope with emotions and ask for help, because we know we often don't do a very good job of that naturally. So we're glad to have you, and we're excited to kick this thing off with you.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the coffee break. I'm so honored and humbled that M4A has asked me to join them today. In January, I launched a new company called Engaged Care Partners, which is available to assist people with navigating care, mostly throughout the Shelby County, Alabama area. And prior to launching the company, I also had written a book about caregiving, specifically for adult children, and mostly for those that are impacted by Parkinson's and or dementia. So my role with caregiving started more than a decade ago, as I supported my mom. She was the primary caregiver for my father, who was diagnosed with Parkinson's and dementia. And it was truly the most amazing and purposeful event and role that I've ever fulfilled in my lifetime. There were so many times of heartbreak and some challenges along the way, but there were also a lot of times of joy. And I just was really grateful to be on that journey with both of them. You know, for some of us, we choose to be caregivers, and then for others of us, caregiving chooses us. And we may be fulfilling the role of caregiver because we cherish our loved ones and want to make sure that they have the best possible care. But for others, we may have inherited the role out of obligation and need. Regardless, caregivers are amazing people and play a critical role in helping our loved ones, no matter what condition they may be facing. Caregivers are asked to do multiple things, keep so many balls up in the air and wear so many hats. And in addition to helping with everyday tasks that come with the activities of daily living, we're also expected to be encouragers or cheerleaders and patient advocates. And truly, nobody knows the loved one in our care better than us. But how we take care of ourselves also greatly impacts how we take care of our loved ones. So today I want to talk to you about the importance of caregiving and building your circle of care, as well as the importance of self-care. And while we're looking at that, we'll also talk about some ways to avoid caregiver burnout and look at some solutions for how to cope with the typical emotions that can come from caregiving. So what do I mean by building a circle of care? When my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's, we as a family was diagnosed with Parkinson's. That's not meant to take away from his journey or what he had to go through, but it truly was, all three of us were in it together. I was an only child and single. My mom, we didn't have a whole lot of family in the area. So for us, it was the three musketeers tackling this together as a team. And I knew it would be just as important for me to support my mother as the primary caregiver as it was for my father. And it's important to think about who can be a part of your circle of care. Is it family, friends, neighbors, community? And when I'm talking about family, I mean children and grandchildren, siblings, nieces, nephews. Who in your circle do you care about that cherishes you, that you can tap into and ask for help when you need it? And as you think about these people and how they can help, what are some activities that they can help with? Can a grandson mow the lawn? Can a granddaughter add an extra load of laundry or even prep a meal? Involving your grandkids and your kids in the opportunity of caregiving for your loved one, those are teachable moments. And it shows and demonstrates the importance of taking care of others into the future. It helps us shape and mold the future of care. So once you've identified your circle of care and your activities, and you've thought about the things that you can ask for help with, the most important thing is being willing to do just that. Because critically important to you as the caregiver is self-care, just as important as it is for the person in your care to get the proper therapies and exercise or nutrition and rest, is equally important for you as the caregiver. And so many times we take that backseat role as caregivers. We make our loved ones in our care our priority, and honorably so. But that's so important that you stay socially connected with your own friends and hobbies whenever and however you can. And by tapping into that circle of care, you're able to do that. And when you see that there are times that people may not be there, looking at those gaps gives you the opportunity to see where you can subsidize some of those services and maybe get volunteers or companions or other people within your community to help. And most importantly, area agencies for aging like Middle Alabama M4A that we're with today, they can help plug you in to different opportunities for respite. Just taking an hour break with us today shows that you are putting your needs first, and that is so important. In addition to self-care, when we don't do it, what tends to happen is we get caregiver burnout. And caregiver burnout is a real thing. It can flip up on all of us. It can be a difficult role to be a caregiver. Ironically, though, one of the most challenging things a caregiver faces is knowing when to stop and ask for help. I can remember that although I had a career in work during the journey with my father and some of the more advanced stages, I would stay with Dad on Saturdays and let Saturdays be that day where Mom could just do anything she wanted to do. It may have been going to get her hair done or nails done or just shopping, but it would never fail that just 2 or so hours after she left, she'd be pulling back into the driveway. And I'd say, Mom, this is your day for you to go out and play and do whatever you want to do. And she said, I can't help it, Brooklyn. I feel selfish because I feel like I should be with your father. I worry about him. Even in your care, even though I know you're doing a good job, I worry when I'm away from him. And that's only natural. But getting used to breaks and implementing them soon and making time for yourself is critical, because then you're a better caregiver for your loved one. So some of the things that you might notice that lead to feeling caregiver burnout and noticing that you're burned out is you might be feeling a little trapped or hopeless, possibly losing patience or compassion with a loved one. Have you noticed that you might be overreacting to small accidents or incidents, maybe a few too many spills? And sadly, we might even feel like we're resenting or neglecting our loved one. And when you start withdrawing from hobbies and friends, or oversleeping or not sleeping enough, overeating, not eating enough, and having health problems yourself, and maybe not even putting yourself as a priority to go to your doctor's appointments, these can all be signs of caregiver burnout. Are you seeking other areas of comfort? It's possibly caregiver burnout. And that's when you need to tap into that circle of care to just really know who you can ask for and get those breaks in place. As caregivers, we tend to find ourselves coping with many different emotions that can come with caregiving. Some of the most common emotions are guilt and resentment, anger or worry, possibly loneliness or grief or defensiveness. And when we start having those feelings, we have to understand that that's only human. It's very natural to have those feelings, and it's okay to feel them, to validate them. But the true goal is to recognize and be mindful of when we have them so that we don't dwell in them and we can find solutions to get past them. So today, I just want to give you a little bit of our story from our journey and how we coped with some of these common emotions. And we'll start with guilt. Guilt is virtually unavoidable, especially if you're trying to do it all. Thoughts you might be having to identify guilt may be, I'm not doing enough, I should have done this, I would have done this better. Guilt stems from us doing or saying what we believe is the wrong thing and not doing what we perceive to be enough, or otherwise not behaving in what we might think is the right way. And whether those perceptions are accurate or not, most caregivers tend to burden themselves with a list of self-imposed oughts, shoulds, coulds, musts. And caregiver guilt is an especially corrosive emotion because you're beating yourself up over faults that are imagined, unavoidable, and simply human. That's counterproductive at a time when you need to be your own best advocate for you and your loved one. So how can you deal with guilt? Maybe lowering your standards from ideal to real, or aiming for suitable instead of perfection might be ideal. When guilt nags, ask yourself, what's triggering it? Above all, recognize that caregiver guilt can be virtually unavoidable. So try to get comfortable with the gap between perfection and reality. And don't beat yourself up over things that you can't control. Another common emotion is resentment, and it's something that a lot of us have a hard time admitting that we feel. But it's also natural because caregivers will often feel put upon and upset because of imagined slights by others, including those in our circle of care. And heck, it may not even be imagined. Some people we wish would think to help us simply don't. And it's only natural to think of all the times we helped them or that we would help them if they were in a similar situation. Without enough support or non-caregiving outlets, feelings of being ignored, abandoned, or criticized can fester into anger or depression. I can remember feeling resentment. This mostly happened when I was spending so much time in the caregiving role, backing up my mom. And I know she spent way more time in it than I did, but I would be scrolling through Facebook and I would look at my friends and how many pictures they were posting of vacations and outings and concerts. And I couldn't help but feel a little bit of resentment or jealousy that I wish I could do that too, but I need to be here as the caregiver. Looking back, I'm grateful that I made the choice to be with my dad. Those are treasured times, even the hard times. I can also remember feeling resentful when someone would say, let me know what I can do to help. And I think people mean well when they say this, but my response was usually, oh, everybody has to say that. They're just being kind. That's what you're supposed to say. And truly, my response usually was, we're fine, thanks. Thanks for the prayers. But if I was truly honest with myself and with the person who had said it, I could have thought about how they could have helped us. And I could have asked them for that help. I could have made my life easier and more joyful in allowing them to serve us, even if that meant I needed to ask rather than hope that they would just offer something specific. These feelings are natural, and when you look back on it, it's easy to see where you had them once the journey is over, especially if we are in the mindset of not wanting to be a burden on anyone. But if I had truly been honest with my friends and families about where I needed the help, I have no doubt that they would have given it. I just needed to ask for it. Today's world, some people aren't as proactive as they used to be on just showing up to help. We make assumptions and we hope that people just will show up and do things for us. But the reality is they need the nudge or encouragement to know that you are open to help. And so many don't want to intrude. And if you are coming across like you've got it together, they don't think you need it. So be honest with yourself and communicate well with those in your circle, and don't be afraid to reach out. because whether we like it or not, it often depends on us being willing to ask for that help. Anger. Another emotion we don't want to admit that we have is anger. And we get mad for reasons both direct, maybe an unfair criticism or one too many mishaps in the day, or indirect. Maybe we've just lost too much sleep, or we're having frustration over the lack of self-control. And maybe we're just penting up too many disappointments that are making us more angry. We're human. I was angry when Dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's. He was diagnosed the same year he retired, and he was the kind of guy that barely took a sick day and was fully devoted to his career. And I was so excited for he and Mom to finally get the time to travel together and have all these leisurely fun activities together. And when we got the diagnosis, I was just angry. I felt like they had been robbed. The reality was there were many, many more years of wonderful travels together. And I let my fear and worry about what could be cloud the days that we had in front of us that were awesome. There were other times that I would feel angry throughout the entire journey. But what I did recognize is that I needed to feel them and I needed to express them in a healthy manner. And by expressing them, that meant not taking it out on my parents or my father. It meant going and talking to people, getting through it with friends, going to some therapy sessions, punching a pillow as hard as I could with my fist, yelling at the top of my lungs. And I felt better, and I could get past whatever it was that was upsetting me, a raw deal or whatever, and realize that I could be where we need to be now and move on and look for the joy. Worry. A little worry goes a long ways, but sometimes we just can't seem to keep from fretting, and we have good intentions. And when we're worrying, we almost feel like we are engaged, and we're doing what we're supposed to do. We're busy. And I can remember my greatest time of worry was generally when, after my dad had fallen and broken his hip, and we had had a surgery and hip replacement and rehabilitation. And I found myself in this constant state of worry, of overprotection for him, because I didn't want him to fall and have to go through anything like that again. But I let that worry overconsume me. And in turn, I may have robbed him of some of his own independence. And for that, I'm sorry. I do regret that. Being concerned is harmless, but when we over worry and over obsess, that's when we start getting feelings of burnout. We start maybe sleeping or not sleeping well. We can truly have physical and emotional health issues from that. And it's important to break the cycle. And so how can you break the cycle of worry? One of the things that was helpful for me is to set a kitchen timer and say, for 5 minutes, I'm going to focus on what this problem is that is giving me the most irritability and concern. And usually I wouldn't even need the 5 minutes that I dedicated to that time. And when that timer would ding, I could turn it to, how can I get past this? What are some solutions to help with this? And I truly could let it go. So sometimes we just need to dedicate that time to think through everything and be mindful of what it is that might have us so anxious. I'm afraid everybody has learned a great deal about loneliness, especially after COVID-19 and lockdowns. And I'm so thankful that we're able to get out and about a little bit more. But for those as caregivers, that's not really the case. When COVID first started, of course, I was scared just like many others. But there was also something that was an odd feeling for me to know that everybody that was complaining about being stuck in the house, I kind of felt like, well, welcome to our world. We've been living this for years because of caregiving and our roles there. And so it can be a lonely journey. And it's so important to be able to connect with others that are along the same path as we are. So many associations, whether it's Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, or you name the condition, there are so many wonderful support groups that are out there that you can go to in person. But if that's not even feasible, that have moved to a virtual community, that have taken on Zoom virtual meetings like we are on today, and even connecting with people on Facebook and checking out the different groups that are on there might be a great way to connect and chat with others who are going through similar experiences. We have to be willing to put ourselves out there, and we have to be willing to engage, and that can be hard. But if you start feeling like you're isolated, don't be afraid to reach out to somebody and say, look, I need an extra hand and I just need a visit. There are times when I know my parents were feeling this and they could no longer go to church or go to Sunday school because of my dad's progression. And as a child, I reached out to their friends and said that, hey, it's okay to go visit. They would love that. And that's all people really needed sometimes, was that permission to be able to go provide that social connection with others. And it was just a wonderful time that my parents could spend with their friends, but sometimes they just needed that extra push to go do it. Grief, a lot of times when we think about grief, we think about it from a standpoint of bereavement, but anticipatory grief is also very real. We experience grief after a diagnosis. We can experience grief as we are advancing through stages of progression with various conditions. And I know I felt grief at each advancing stage with my father. And truly, grief is healthy. I think if we let ourselves feel where we are and acknowledge our emotions and validate that this isn't fair, and I do wish that things were different, that's okay. And that's what helps us resolve where we are, look past it, and seek the joy where we can find it. Defensiveness, protecting yourself is really good to a point. When you're doing so much, it's only natural to bristle at the suggestions that might be different or presented as a better approach, especially if you're feeling stressed or insecure or you're unsure about your caregiving duties. But hearing comments can sometimes feel like criticism coming from others, especially those that don't live in the day-to-day with you. And it can inspire a knee-jerk reaction, such as, you just don't get it, or you don't know, I live with them every day. And this can cause friction from even the most well-meaning and close family members and loved ones, and even healthcare providers. It's easy to have that reaction of, I know what I'm doing, or just let me do it my way. And while nobody knows your loved one in your situation as well as you do, being overly defensive can also make you close-minded. You risk losing out on the real help. You may be so close to the situation that you can't see the forest for the trees. So try not to take everything you hear too personally. Instead of immediately getting cross or discarding others' input, vow to pause long enough to consider it and remember the big picture. Is there merit in a new idea? What you're hearing as a criticism of you might actually be well-intentioned, an attempt to help your loved one or you. So if you're feeling any of these emotions today, or you've felt them in the past, you aren't alone. You are human, and chances are there will be a time when you feel any of these emotions as a caregiver. Again, it's normal. Validate them, feel them, just don't dwell in them. I almost feel like a greeting card, especially at Christmas time, when I'd say, seek the joy and comfort. We always hear the Christmas carols or Christmas cards, glad tidings of joy and comfort. We wish you goodwill. And truly, when we're in the day-to-day of caregiving, it's very important that we seek that joy and seek that comfort. Taking the breaks where we can, doing the activities that we still love to do, trying to find times to disconnect, unplug, and have a coffee with friends. Or maybe it's even just rest and silent meditation or prayer. What are the activities that make you feel whole again, that rejuvenate you, and that bring joy? Because those are the areas where you really need to prioritize breaks and focus on throughout your journey. Being a caregiver is hard. I recently saw this graphic on Facebook, and I thought it was pretty interesting because it takes the word of caregiver, and the first column was basically some of the feelings that can come along with caregiving. And the second column is more about how you really are as a caregiver, that you don't give yourself enough credit for. And so as caregivers, we can be absolutely consumed by the everyday activities. But by choosing to be a caregiver, you are courageous because you are choosing to put someone else's needs as important as your own. And we talked about times you might feel alone, and maybe the loved one in your care can't show you their appreciation and they can't say it, but deep down you need to realize they are truly appreciative even when they can't say it or show it. We all feel run down, but it's so important to know the importance and critical role of being responsible. Your loved one, knowing that you have their back, is so reassuring to them. And even though it may make you exhausted, you have an opportunity to be encouraging to them. We've talked about grief, but there's no better role in life than being able to be a giver to somebody else. And I think that's why giver is in the word caregiver. We're all times feel that we're irritable, but we can also be inspiring. And we may feel like we've taken a back seat and that our lives don't have value because we are focused so much on those in our care. But you are valid and valued. There are days where we're just empty. We're running on empty. We don't have the strength. We didn't get the rest. We don't have the nutrition that's fueling our system to help others. And we have to plug in so that we can become more empowered. And on those days where we might feel raw, the opportunity comes when we can be receptive and be willing to ask for the help that we might need, whether that's from our circle of care, our family, friends, neighbors, to reaching out to the agencies and professional services that are available to give us that hand. You know, there's a word that is in our language, and I wish it was just removed. I wish nobody even knew it existed. And that word is such a nasty word to me, and it starts with a B. And that word is burden. You know, to be human is to need help. Every single person in this world is going to need help at some time or another. Do not consider yourself a burden if you need help. Do not consider yourself a burden if you're a caregiver and need to ask for help. The person in your care and you are loved, you are cherished, and you are uniquely and wonderfully made. Let those who love you give back to you. For all the years that you've loved them, let them have a chance to serve you. Do not be afraid of disrupting lives. Do not be afraid of asking for them to give something up for you. You deserve to be supported. So I'm really glad that you guys chose to take a break with us today. And I did mention my company at the beginning of the session, Engage Care Partners. And basically what we do is provide consulting services to help people navigate care. And one thing I did do is write a book about my father's journey. It's called Sunsets and Silver Linings, Caring for Parents with Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia. It's really intended for adult children who are navigating care for their parents, especially Parkinson's and dementia. It includes the hard lessons that we learned, practical tips for caregivers, many of which were mentioned today. And while I wish I could just give it out to everybody for free, I do have to pay the publishers. It's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and a portion of the proceeds will benefit the Parkinson's Association of Alabama. And so I just really thank you guys for letting me speak today. And at this time, I'd be happy to take any questions. So Jeremy?
And I don't see any currently on our Facebook. And again, if you're watching us live on the webinar, feel free to drop any comments in the Q&A and or the chat feature, as well as our Facebook live feed. Or even if you're watching this afterwards, we also have the option of the playback on our YouTube channel. I don't see any right now, but I just had, I mean, you know, from our experience working with caregivers, especially with our Alabama Cares program, I can speak to this too, Brooklyn, in that, you know, our coffee break sessions are really designed for caregivers. And that's sort of the purpose that we came up with these, was to have sort of a live break session for caregivers to join us live. But this presentation, to me, equally speaks as much to friends and families of caregivers, because I'm sure you can probably speak to this as well. Oftentimes, it's a very uncomfortable thing to ask for help. And, you know, just knowing the things that we know, and, you know, from the sounds of your presentation, you know, I would encourage those who are, even if you don't consider yourself to be within the care circle of someone, whether it be a sibling or, you know, a friend, reach out to those caregivers for help, because, you know, oftentimes they're not going to ask for it. And sometimes that's all it takes, is just a little bit of, you know, generosity from their friends and families to reach out. And, you know, oftentimes people think they always equate respite care or relief to, you know, to someone coming into the home and, you know, cleaning the home, or really trying to do more of a medical or personal care standpoint. But that's not at all true. I mean, some of the things that Brooklyn mentioned, you know, just being able to go for a walk, or, you know, make a cup of coffee, or go to the mall if those still exist, or, you know, get on Facebook and join a coffee break session, or an online support group. Those are all respite opportunities that allow that caregiver to recharge and really, you know, if they're able to take care of themselves, they're able to take care of their loved one even better. And really, you know, especially like you mentioned during the pandemic, you know, during the social isolation, especially early on, you know, that just, you know, the numbers were staggering, from domestic violence to you know, to deaths, to everything. So it really is a unique opportunity for someone to reach out, and not always have to have the caregiver reach out and ask for help. We really need to, as friends and family, notify that, or notice that, and really you know, take advantage of it. I did see a staggering, and I've seen higher percentages before. This is a pretty old article, but I pulled up an article on aging care. This is from 2007, and there were rough statistics that show that 30% of caregivers, and like I said, I'm sure it's higher now, 30% of caregivers actually pass away before the person they're caring for, because they themselves are, you know, short on time to go to their own physician and look at their own health. Stress, you know, just general overall health and wellness is, you know, under a lot of influence of their role as a caregiver, especially if they're doing it on their own, which many people do, you know, caregiving on their own. And as you can imagine, as that caregiver ages, the chances just rise with that. So I just wanted to add that, you know, we're specifically talking to caregivers usually with coffee break, but I think this is equally as much of an outreach to those who are friends and family of caregivers, as much as is the caregivers themselves.
I wholeheartedly agree. And, you know, I think our generation, and I'm 45, so I'm giving away my age, but, you know, we're taught as parents that we are successful when we raise these independent kids, and we're proud when they go off and they do and accomplish all of these things. And so as parents, once we get to a point where we may be aging or need that additional help, we don't want to disrupt them in their lives, and we don't want to ask them for help. But the chances are that those children, in most cases, I know not all, do want to figure out a way in which they can be connected and help. And for those that may be a little bit isolated or don't have that necessary support, it takes us trying to rethink about communicating well with one another on our needs, and then realizing if we don't have that support within our circle, also not being afraid to go out and get it if it's beyond our family and friends. So.
I completely agree. And we did have a sample question come through here. I think that we've experienced, again, as part of our organization and the families that we serve. We encounter sometimes where there may be situations where even in the attempt for that person, to the caregiver themselves, to ask for help, the person they're caring for may be resistant to care for anyone other than themselves. And I think in those situations, obviously, every situation, every individual is unique. And that's why you have to sort of tailor that care plan and that care circle to that person's needs. But like I had mentioned earlier, I mean, not every situation necessarily is going to call for, personal care or actual hands-on care. It could just be, sitting with that person, or, whatever it may be, sitting next to a pond and fishing with that person. I mean, it could be anything, just swinging. That allows that caregiver a break, and it's not necessarily, a physical care in the usual sense that we think of it, but that still allows that caregiver such an opportunity to recharge and just take care of themselves so that they can take care of their loved ones. So I don't see any more questions. I don't see any on our Facebook live feed. Again, if you have any, go ahead.
I did actually see one question come through. It says, what about when we need help, but the person we care for refuses help from anyone other than us? And I think that's an excellent question. And we experienced this a lot with my father, so I can speak personally to this. So many times those that are diagnosed with Parkinson's or dementia especially tend to, I don't like the word latch on, but that person that is giving them the most care, they can tend to want them to be the only person to give them care. And I understand that. My dad was like that with my mother. There were some things that he would allow me to do as his daughter, but as dementia progressed, he became more and more reliant on wanting my mother to be the one to do it. And the reality was, no one person can be the one person for everything all the time. Even though you are the preferred person to give the care, even though you may know you are the best person to give the care, you still have to take that break. And they are going to be okay. They are, even if they get a little bit nasty or have a little bit of an attitude with somebody, that's okay. That still doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice everything that you're doing. You have to be able to recharge, because if that person is that way in your care, chances are you are being bombarded and overworked more than anybody. And so you really are the ones that need the break the most. So yes, they may not be perfect for somebody else. They may act better with you than other people. They may be difficult or challenging at times. But most care companion providers are trained for that. They know that. They recognize it. In some ways, that person may want a break from you more than they let on too. So even if they don't show it, a break is healthy and good for everybody.
And you bring up a good point, Brooklyn. Even if you're in a situation where maybe you're in a position where you're interested in reaching out to someone for help, but maybe you, especially in the case of more serious conditions like Alzheimer's or any dementia related diagnoses, you may be sort of intimidated about thinking that you might not be a very good caregiver, but there are options out there that can help train you to be and feel more comfortable, whether it be through private organizations, local area agencies on aging, YouTube. I mean, there's resources out there that can kind of help equip, even the care circle with those skills to be a better care partner. And I just think that, again, I can't stress enough that caregivers just tend to get in a situation where they're hesitant to ask for help, and I think that gives us a really great opportunity as friends and families. So we did have another question that came through. It says, any recommendations for forming a care team? So you had a pretty unique situation, Brooklyn, where you were, I think you said, an only child. So how difficult was that, and how would you recommend those forming a care team, how to get started with that?
That's a great question. And yes, we had a very small family. And also, a couple of years before my dad passed, my mom actually lost all three siblings in a year. So it's almost like our support system bottomed out from underneath us. And I think it's important to think through everything medically. Who are your doctors, your primary care physicians, your nurses that are on your team? Who can you rely on to help with financial or legal matters that you are trying to navigate? Who can help you with that? And then being willing to communicate to these people is the number one thing. So if you can kind of figure out who can help you navigate portions that are their strengths, whether it's financial, legal, medical, and even connecting with your community organizations and churches to help fill those gaps. Just keeping that circle connected with each other and communicating well with each other can make the process a lot easier. Most of my clients that I work with are most challenged by just trying to navigate care and just understand what resources are available to them. And then once you can truly plug into one or two key people with whatever you're struggling with, it's amazing how that circle grows. And also, we sometimes get tied up on thinking about just blood relationships or just our individual family, but don't discount what neighbors and fellow church members can do for you and want to do for you. And you will be amazed by being willing to open up to them. Then you can get even more joy and see relationships grow that you didn't even know that you may have.
And as with anything, I'm sure that, especially if you're in, obviously there are going to be situations that prevent early preparation, but if you're in a spot where, especially in an early diagnosis of something, that might give you the opportunity to go ahead and start planning for things as if, so when that opportunity comes that you need that care team more than anything, it might be a good idea to sort of start pre-planning for some of that so that you're not as stressed in the moment, when it hits you the worst. And we did have another question comes through. It says, is there any more tips on keeping Parkinson's specific patients engaged with previous enjoyed activities like exercise, shopping, dinner dates, etc.?
Yes. So thank you for asking that. With Parkinson's, sometimes in some dementias, our patients tend to become or feel apathy or depression. And truly, for everybody, we all need engagement. And if there were previous activities that were enjoyed, I always say do as much as you can, as long as you can. And particularly for Parkinson's, nothing is more important than movement and exercise, and being willing to keep going shopping and going out on the dinner dates is so critical. For everybody, the person that has the condition and the person that's in their care. And I know we may run into times where those trips may need to be shortened a little bit based on whatever's going on, or maybe we have to adapt them or change them. But I truly believe when we have healthy engagement with each other, maybe it's working on puzzles together or choosing hobbies like painting or building birdhouses or gardening, that offers healthy fatigue. And the more engaged and the more we participate in activities, the more healthy our rest can be. And just our overall demeanor can be more joyful. And I did want to plug something. There is this thing called Respite for All. It started in Montgomery, Alabama, at a church, and since then has grown through with many churches in the state of Alabama and beyond the state that are providing a respite program. And it's called Best Day Ever. And each church has their own thing, and you can find more about it in the locations by going to respiteforall.com. And it's a day where you can drop your loved one off, but they don't know that they're even a participant. They may be a volunteer, and they can participate in these joyful activities that also includes exercises and fun games like volleyball with balloons and pool noodles and just tons of activities. So, being able to give yourself a break, but also keep your loved one engaged with those activities is truly important, and it can help slow progression of Parkinson's and dementia. So get out and keep moving and keep active and keep plugged in with people wherever you can is my biggest advice.
I did want to include too, I just dropped that as a comment under our live Facebook feed video. It's respiteforall.org. I just want to make sure we clarify on that. And I put a link to that in the comments section. So definitely check that out. And we had another question here. With physical therapy, can that help slow the progression of Parkinson's?
I believe it can. There are many opportunities for therapy for Parkinson's, and I think by getting with a physical therapist early on in diagnosis, you can put together a plan and a fitness routine that allows you to make sure you're making all the right movements. With Parkinson's, we tend to get smaller in our reactions, in our stance, our gait, our balance. We don't take as large of steps. We don't move our arms as large or big. And by being able to go big with some of those therapies, it reinforces in our mindset to take those extra steps so that we can, prevent falls that might come from our balance being off and our gait. And by being able to put those in practice, that saves us from having other potential injuries that could, start the decline quicker than we want. So there's a lot of research out there that says exercise and therapy is probably the best drug therapy out there for Parkinson's. So.
Great. Well, Brooklyn, we're getting close to the 2:00 hour here. And again, we really want to thank you. You've brought an enormous amount of knowledge and ideas for people that hopefully can, if you consider not even using half of the things that Brooklyn's mentioned, at least we have some tips here, and hopefully we'll get you interested in sort of in the mode to help prepare in case this were to impact you, or hopefully if you're, like I said, if you're a friend or family member of a caregiver that you see that is caring for a loved one really quite a bit around the clock, then hopefully this will be sort of a permission to reach out to them to let them know that you care and that you're there available. So, and Brooklyn, while I'm changing screens, did you want to mention, as far as any kind of, you may have already mentioned this and I apologize, but if you again want to mention any kind of contact information for you, so that if any of the listeners want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Absolutely. So the company name is Engage Care Partners, and that is www.engagecarepartners.com, all one word. You can also reach me by email at brooklyn.white@engagecarepartners.com or by phone at 205-843-1908. And I would be happy to answer any questions you might have. I love to hear from everyone. And again, the book can be found on Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble in e-read versions or hardback or paperback. And it's called Caring for Parents with Parkinson's, Sunsets and Silver Linings. And type my name as author. It's the only book I've written, so it should come up that way.
Well, I would say it's a very important book. So even if it's only one, I'm sure that you're going to change a lot of lives with it. And for that, we're thankful for sure. And again, we thank you for coming on. We'll switch gears just a bit here and review over M4A real quick before we get out of here. And again, we're recording this, so we'll have this information. I'm going to try to reach out to Brooklyn afterwards. We'll make sure that we get all of her contact information listed in the YouTube description section as well, so that you can have that if you need a hard copy of it. But M4A is a part of a network of 13 agencies, area agencies on aging, what we call the Aging Network for the state of Alabama. As you see there on the screen, we're sort of spread out all across the state. There's an area agency on aging that covers each, city, territories, location in America. For Alabama, we have 13. And we cover the entire state, and our overall mission is to age in place and providing services, support services, whether that be resources or in-house services that can help with that process. Specifically for M4A, our mission is to empower individuals, people living with disabilities, and their caregivers to self-advocate, as well as to live independently and safely in the communities of their choice. Our tagline, our motto, you'll see it on all of our outreach material, is assisting all ages at all stages. And specifically, we cover Blount, Chilton, St. Clair, Shelby, and Walker counties in Alabama, as well as Jefferson County for our senior employment program. The way that it works for our agency is we have what's called an Aging and Disability Resource Center. You can contact us in person. We have a physical location in Saginaw between Calera and Alabaster. You can also contact us at our local number 205-670-5770, or as you see there on the phone or on the screen, you can contact the statewide toll-free number 1-800-AGE line, and they'll connect you with your local area agency on aging if you happen to live outside of the areas that I mentioned on the previous screen. We've also introduced a new website. So we've got some new screenshots here of our new website. It's much more user-friendly, and we're really enjoying it. But there's also an option that you see there with the arrows pointing at a make referral button. So if you're not in a position to where you can come into our office or contact us, you can also make a virtual referral through our website. And if you click that button, it'll take you to this page, but you can also just punch in m4a.org/make-a-referral, and it'll take you to that page to get some information about the situation that you're calling on behalf of, and our ADRC team will make sure that they get in contact with you to do a benefit screening to see what all you might be eligible for. These are some of our core services. I won't go over all of them, but just know that we have quite a bit under one building, ranging from nutrition programs to long-term care support services to, again, as previously mentioned, our senior employment program, insurance counseling. So we have a wide variety of services that we provide. And whenever consumers call into our office, we screen those situations to see what all would apply and what all that person might be eligible for, and makes referrals to those programs. Those are available primarily across every agency across the state. There's a few exceptions, but for the most part, the core services are provided through each of the 13 agencies across the state. These are some of the programs that are unique to M4A. I mentioned the PANDA Project. It's a grant program specializing in dementia-specific care for those living in the Shelby County region and individuals who are caring for their loved ones who may have a dementia-related diagnosis, as well as those who have a high risk. We also have other dementia-related initiatives like the Dementia Friendly Alabama outreach, where we train law enforcement officers and first responders, as well as critical needs fund. We also, during the pandemic, incorporated a new program we call Friend in Me, where we reach out to those who we find that might need that assistance, that call once a week, once every 2 weeks, a month. However, we design the plan with them to see if we can kind of help check on that person, make sure things are going okay. Again, there are several other programs. There are different initiatives that we're always thinking of. So that's definitely subject to change. We do have social media accounts. You see there, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. We are certainly more active on our Facebook the most. And with our YouTube channel, we try to put as many videos on there as we can, especially with our Take a Stand initiative and our coffee break series like we're on now. And we also have a newsletter. If you go to the bottom of our main website page, you'll see a login or a section there where you can fill out to join our newsletter. We highly encourage that because those go out generally on a weekly basis to let you know about things that are happening in the communities, as well as if it's a virtual event, we try to get those out to our consumers. Here's our contact information, our physical location. Again, we're between Alabaster and Calera down Highway 31. There's our local number, as well as the toll free and our mailing address, as well as our website. And we've got our next coffee break is tentatively scheduled for November, which is National Family Caregiver Awareness Month, as well as Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month. So you won't want to miss that. That'll be a really great presentation, and we're scheduling that for November of this year. I did want to mention too, with our Alabama Care specifically, there are other resources that we try to promote as well within our agency beyond our walls, but we do have 2 monthly support groups through our Alabama Cares program. And I'm going to invite Crystal, are you still there? I'm going to pull you in to speak more on that real quick.
Sure. So the Alabama Cares program hosts 2 virtual support groups on the second Thursday from 12 to 1 p.m. So over most people's lunch hour, if you are a caregiver who still works. And then we also have a support group on the 3rd Wednesday of each month from 2 to 3 p.m. So for those that are perhaps not working outside of the home, but are still trying to balance caregiving and raising children, this generally occurs after you've been able to get your loved one lunch, but before the kids get home from school. Again, this is every single month. There's more details available in our newsletter if you want to sign up for that, as well as them being virtual. We are pursuing opportunities to resume some in-person meetings. So if you're interested in that, just drop us an email. You can email me at cwhitehead@m4a.org. And as soon as we have an idea of which in-person location might be the most successful, we can get that scheduled.
And even in addition, like Crystal mentioned, that's virtual. So speaking of which, there are also a plethora of other online support groups across the nation, across the world. I've seen support groups in Facebook. There's Facebook Live videos. So please, if you're in a situation where you're a caregiver and you feel like you're alone in this, you are not, feel free. A support group is one of the best options you can have. I'm sure Brooklyn's probably attended a support group at least once as a caregiver, as well as, watched playbacks and different videos that help support caregivers. So please know that there's support out there. And like I mentioned earlier, it's not always about physical help. It could just be someone to talk to vent to, and that help is always available. So definitely feel free to reach out to us as an agency as a whole. Again, you can reach out to Brooklyn, she's mentioned before, and we are running out of time here. So Brooklyn, thank you again. It was such an awesome presentation. And again, this will be on our YouTube channel very soon. So if you missed it, you're catching us on the tail end. Definitely go back and watch it and reach out to Brooklyn if you have any questions for her as well.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Really appreciate being here today.
All right. Thank you. Well, you guys have a great afternoon, and we will see you again in November. Make sure you stay tuned to our Facebook page, especially. We'll be putting events and all as they come across throughout the rest of 2022. But until next time, we'll see you in November for the coffee break session number 29. Thanks so much for joining us, guys.